The Pokemon community has always had a strong fan scene, starting with the nerdy kids on the playground trading to evolve their Gengar, with that one kid not trading back and screwing you out of your hard-earned Pokemon, and dare I say friend? Yeah, fuck you, Brendan. I remember what you did. Now that we're past that, my main point is that the fan base is very strong. And when I say the fan base is big, I mean eventually people were going to start making fan projects. Looking back to when I was a wee lad on the internet, around the age of 9, I came across a game called Pokemon Dark Rising. This game was a crazy Pokemon ROM hack. Wait, I know what you're thinking. Seppi, what the hell is a ROM hack and why should I care about it? Well, a ROM hack is something that takes a normal Pokemon game, like Pokemon Fire Red or Emerald or anything like that, and changes it up, usually giving it like a custom story, custom Pokemon, maybe a custom region, or maybe even custom mechanics in some cases. Anyways, now that we're through that little explanation, Dark Rising took everything you knew about Pokemon and made it harder, with tougher battles and random encounters that you're literally scripted to lose in. I mean, like 20 minutes into the run, you end up fighting a level 50 Tornadus that just kind of flattens you. This game is extremely difficult, and nowadays it's kind of infamous for being super edgy for no reason, and also being extremely tedious with tons of characters and fights. But back in the day, this was some of the best stuff we had, and it's what started my love for the fan game community. Speaking of infamous ROM hacks, we're gonna move into the first ROM hack that I was actually able to play myself. I remember coming home from school one day and realizing I could get an emulator on my Kindle Fire, so I did what any kid would have done. I tried to find the coolest fan game I could get, and that for me was Pokémon Snakewood, the zombie apocalypse Pokemon game with a pretty horrible story and some insane pacing. I kid you not, you would fight a level 50 and then it would shoot up to level 60s in your next fight. I think I spent half my time on this game leveling up for hours in the grass and complaining I wasn't able to get my hands on any of the zombie Pokemon in the zombie Pokemon game. I'm sure my parents loved constantly hearing about that. Basically what I'm saying is although back then these games were decent enough and were kind of the standard, they don't really hold up anymore today. And a lot of that is because of how much ROM hacks have evolved since 2012. But before we talk about that, let's look at proper fan games. These were the next logical step for Pokemon projects, the biggest difference being they run in their own app instead of relying on an emulator, and most of them are made in something like RPG Maker, meaning now they don't need to rely on the capabilities and limitations of Pokemon ROMs themselves, giving way more freedom for custom Pokemon regions and mechanics. The first mainstream game I saw popping off back in the day was Pokémon Insurgence, and this game included tons of Pokemon from generations 1 to 7, while also including Mega Evolution, custom forms, and custom Mega Evolutions, believe it or not. The region for it was something we've never really seen up to that point, especially because you would be able to do things like turn contaminated water into clean water, and stuff like that with mechanics. Think of the HMs, but ridiculously expanded upon. All that while giving you a look into a darker take on the Pokemon world, with multiple groups trying to make the world their own version of perfect, using the power of different legendary Pokemon, and even forming cults based around them. After that, I found Pokemon Uranium, where you play as the child of a scientist and a Pokemon Ranger. Stemming from the name Uranium, you can assume something sciencey happens, and in fact, we lose our mom in a reactor meltdown before the start of the game. After that, your dad leaned into his ranger work, becoming the best ranger in the region, but kind of leaving us to grow up with our aunt and not really seeing him ever. Because of all the issues we had in our early childhood, we set out to conquer the badges, become the best, and find out the truth about our family, all while having a ton of cool features, like a new nuclear type, a new Pokemon, new Megas, and even more custom things added to this game, even a nuclear type evolution. In the same vein, we also had Pokémon Reborn, to this day one of the best Pokemon projects ever released. It's another fan game with a darker plot and darker ideas to it, with there being times where a character will do something like scam you out of money. The game is also difficult, and it has some cool ways to encounter Pokemon, with some areas not even having grass, especially if it wouldn't make logical sense. Like, of course there's not a ton of grass in a city alleyway, because why would there be? In which case you have to do side quests to find Pokemon, or just find them naturally in the alleyways and stuff like that. Fairly recently, I think people got really sick of the standardized Pokemon games we've been getting forever, and a few people decided to break that standard Pokemon formula, such as the developers behind Pokémon Beekeeper, a fan game where you run a Stardew Valley style bee ranch, or maybe Pokemon This Gym of Mine, a game that I've actually played through on the channel where you become a gym leader and defend your gym and city against an evil team and all other little events. By the way, you should check that out after this if you haven't seen it yet. It's a really fun video and I had a great time, blah blah blah, sales pitch. At this point, ROM hacks started to catch up a bit, and that's when we got Radical Red, a game you've definitely heard about if you've spent a good amount of time in the Pokemon community. This game has just about everything it needs. It uses the Kanto region as a base, but it adds tons of characters, difficulty, and features. And when I say features, I mean they added pretty much everything you could think of. Dynamax, Dexnav, Megas, EV and IV training, Nature Mints, Z-moves, and tons of just quality of life features. It's actually insane. I think it's helped push a lot of ROM hacks in the direction of fan games when it comes to features. And that leads me on to one of my favorite fan projects of all time, Pokémon Emerald Rogue. This game came out in a kind of weird time for me as a Pokémon fan. I was pretty unhappy with the main Pokemon games, and I pretty much stuck to playing competitive, bouncing between OU and VGC at the time. Basically, I was pretty sad, and this game pulled me out of that. To tell you how much I actually enjoyed this game, I played the original version of it on stream a few years ago when I was actually streaming on this channel, and even fairly recently, I replayed the updated version of the game in a run for a video. It mixes the Pokemon formula and the roguelike genre perfectly into each other to make a Nuzlocke's wet dream, min-maxing your Pokemon and team for whatever combination of random stuff you might run into. I personally think this game directly inspired Pokerogue, a fan project run on a browser that took over the Pokemon community for a month or two, and essentially did the same thing but included things like Pokemon fusions and daily runs, giving you always something new to do. They also did little tweaks to the formula, like making shinies have a genuine advantage on your run, meaning it's kind of worth it to farm for those. In my opinion, the browser honestly seems like it's the next step for Pokemon games. I mean, we've always had Pokemon Showdown for competitive players, and that's something I can play on my break at work as long as I have my phone with me. Pokerogue gives you that same level of accessibility while also offering a fairly casual experience for all levels of skill. Pretty soon after Pokerogue blew up, I found out about a game called Pokemon Auto Chest. And this takes everything you know about Pokemon, whether it be the evolutions, type advantages, and items, and basically throws it all away. You don't need any of that anymore because we're playing Teamfight Tactics. The only difference that is instead of super hot and or edgy League of Legends characters, we have all your lovable Pokemon, like Charmander and Pikachu, and have them grouping up, causing synergies. For example, you can build a water team in this game and you'll randomly fish up more Pokemon to help you along with other cool synergies that just don't make sense for Pokemon, but they do make sense for Pokemon Auto Chest. There's tons of other games I could have talked about in this video, like Pokemon Sweet and Pokemon Sweet Tooth, games that take every Pokemon type and assign them new candy types, or Pokemon Clover, a game simply made to show off 4chan humor while also having some cool Fakemon along the way. The insane part of the fan game community, and the thing that makes me just love it as much as I do, is the fact of how much content is constantly coming out. I mean, legit, while looking up things for this script, I found out about more games, like a game where you play as a retired champion, and a game where you get shipwrecked at sea and have to survive on an island. There's so many different games that by the time this is recorded, edited, and uploaded, I'll probably have enough to make a part 2. And that's not even counting some of the weirder stuff, like the old Pokemon PETA games where you play as a Pokemon trying not to get killed and turn into a burger, or things like fan games of side games, like ROM hacks of stuff like Conquest or Mystery Dungeon. If you would like to see me talk about more games in the future, give me some recommendations in the comments. And hell, if you want to see a full video on any of the games I have brought up, let me know, because there's some awesome things in the Pokemon community. It's insane to see some of the creativity I see in these fan projects. With that all being said, I'm going to wrap up the video today, but if you've actually made it this far and you've enjoyed, please go ahead and like this video and subscribe for me. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm an extremely small creator, and it's insane you were even able to find this video.